This is the You Not Me podcast with Chris Behrmann. On today's show, we're going to talk about starting now, why it's so important to start now, whether you have a goal, an ambition, a change you want to make in your life, a new habit that you want to establish. Starting now is key. People often say, I'll do that next week, I'll start in 10 years. But then before they know it, they're just so far gone from a place where that goal is even feasible anymore. So today we're just going to give you some practical wisdom for making those small, consistent actions and choices every single day that end up building momentum and really compound into lasting and enduring change. So Chris, welcome in today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
So really, this podcast episode, Chris, really came about from kind of a personal revelation that you had just in your own life. So maybe, jumping in here, you can just share about how this idea came about for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, for me, fitness has always been something that I've enjoyed doing. When I coached middle school and high school soccer, one of the sayings I used to use is fitness is fun. Even though it's painful in the moment, it's fun because the thing is yeah, it hurts while you're doing it, but when it's game time and the other team's exhausted and you're pushing through and you're able to get to the ball first, you're winning, you're doing all those things, like it's fun. It pays off in the long run. And so one of the things I've noticed myself is just being so crazy busy with work over the last almost 3 years, being around 10 to 12-hour days and even on the weekends, and just not getting a chance to work out like I would want to. And if I did have free time, it was majority spent with my family, with friends, doing things I needed to do in life. But I wasn't making my own health a priority. And what I realized is, even though I would make sure I would try to get a workout in anywhere from 2 to 4 times a week, it would be 15 to 20 minute, like super high intense workouts, which is good. But what I realized is it was just maintaining what I had. It wasn't allowing me to grow. And obviously one of the things we talk about all the time is just growth. It's about constantly growing in life and how can you do that? And so recently I made a change to just make sure, whether it's getting up in the morning early or somehow finding a way to, at least at minimum 4 to 5, maybe even 6 days a week, getting a good workout in, and what that means, not just for the short term, but really the long term. And even sometimes when we're working out, it's painful. And there are times when, if we're doing a really high intensity workout and, the goal is to get, say, 10 reps and you get to 6 and it hurts, and then you get to 8 and it's painful, and your brain says, stop. Your brain says, just put it down. What's 2 more reps? But really, if you do 2 more, you're going to feel the same pain as you did probably at 8, but you'll have missed out if you stopped at 8. And so, just as a great analogy in life, is how often do we just stop when it starts to hurt a bit? Maybe when things get painful, but it's kind of like, what we talked about in the last newsletter about the stone cutter. It's those 100, blows that maybe you don't see anything move, but that 101st blow is when that rock shatters. And do we sometimes fall short and just stop too early?
Absolutely. Something that we're going to talk about now as we transition into more of the episode today is just how to really start small. Because, for you, obviously you had these desires of, maybe I want to invest a little bit more into my health. Maybe someone that's listening wants to build a new habit. Maybe it's not necessarily going to the gym, but maybe it's, relationally, they want to make a bigger investment into their spouse or their kids or their friends or whatever it is. Maybe into a coworker, something along those lines. So if we can just go into speaking about the power of starting small, sometimes those small choices of just saying, hey, you know what, today I'm going to actually just take myself to the gym. That seems like a small and insignificant step, but obviously if you don't go to the gym, you're not going to work out. If you don't put on your running shoes, you're not going to go for a run. So there's an analogy that I want to use of, if someone's to buy an abandoned house, obviously that's, a massive project. Maybe some listeners have taken on, a big renovation project or something along those lines. You obviously don't fix that overnight. There's a lot of steps that go into making it a totally abandoned, foreclosed house into something that's livable, let alone something that's aesthetic and beautiful and something that's hospitable for other people to come and be a part of. You obviously have to clean the debris. You have to probably fix the foundation. You have to make a lot of structural changes. Then you have to go through and say, all right, what do we want it to look like? What's the design? And all of these things. So maybe explain, even from your own experience of just these recent changes that you're making, how those small steps, even though they might seem insignificant, of hey, I'm going to take these, 10 rotten wooden planks out of the house today. That doesn't seem like a huge deal. But over time, those things really add up, and that there's a lesson for everyone who's listening of just that growth and change are things that happen gradually. It's never just an overnight success. There's a ton of reps that go into any kind of transformation. You even mentioned Jacob Riis and the stone cutter. Stone doesn't break on just the first try. If it's a big boulder, it takes 101, maybe 102, maybe more. So maybe just touch on how growth and change are something that happen gradually, but they actually begin with a decision to just act and make a change.
Yeah, I mean, your analogy and talking about the abandoned house, you don't just stumble upon an abandoned house. You actually have to make the choice to purchase it, to say, hey, the lot has value, or the the shell has value, or whatever it is. And so it was interesting back in 2008 and 9, and we've talked a lot about just my going through the real estate crisis, how we lost everything. And when we were selling our house and actually looking for a different house, smaller house to move into, one house we heard from friends that was going on the market was actually going to be put up for auction. Was basically someone foreclosed. The person was a hoarder, and we got a chance to go in and look at it, and it was terrible. I mean, there was stuff it was unbelievable. I mean, and the thing is, the house was great. And the point is if you buy a house like that, you don't just like start painting the outside of the brick and then and move in and live amongst the muck. I mean, what you do is you start with the inside first. And so to your point, whether it's carrying out, ripping out bad lumber, whether it's taking out trash or moldy debris, whatever it is, it's those little things on the inside that slowly starts to make it a home to where it's habitable. And then once you get the inside really livable and you get it to where you want to be, especially if you have a fixed budget, you're not going to fix the outside and just live amongst squalor. You're going to fix the inside first. And once you have money saved up for the outside, you'll fix it then. And too often what we do is we try to make the outside look pretty first instead of working on the inside. And back to even, talking about working out with me even earlier today, just, the point is the decision to do the extra rep is made internally. It's an internal self decision, right? It's self discipline. And yeah, eventually over time, and part of it too is working out, you may not see results for at least weeks, if not months, depending on how far and how long it's been since you've worked out. So the question is, do you have that self discipline to know that every rep matters? Every time you show up matters? Because if we just do it because we hope to look good on the outside first, after a week of hard work and nothing shows and changes on the outside, people give up and they stop because they want the outside world to see, hey, look at how good and fit I am, instead of saying like, hey, every time I go to the gym, it's developing discipline, work ethic, and endurance. When we endure pain, that's how we gain endurance. We don't gain endurance if we don't endure pain. And so, back when I used to race mountain bikes and do triathlons, one of the sayings was that, after 5 days, you started to lose fitness. And so you didn't want to go 5 days without running or biking or whatever it is. And so you would always try and see, hey, oh my gosh, it's 5 days, whether it's work's been busy, kids, whatever it is that's been busy, can I at least get a 20-minute ride in, or an hour ride, or spin on the trainer, or go for a run, whatever it is. And finding those little things so that you stay connected, because what happens is over time, we might start here, but there's that slow fade that happens over time. And all of a sudden we look up and we're like, how did we get from there to here? And it was just because a string of events where you're like, oh, okay, it's just one day, then it's 2 days, not a big deal, 5. And then it just becomes a habit in the negative versus a good habit. And so can we find a way to say, hey, you know what, even if it's just one little small action, like say you're working out with your buddies, work's been busy, and you haven't been able to join at the gym and meet up with them, can you at least, if there's been a couple of days, just do like 3 or 4 sets of like 30, 40 push-ups or whatever, and then like some squats. Then at least you've hit some muscle groups, you've done something to where you're at least maintaining, and you're not continuing to slide backwards. And the same thing, I mean, the growth is slow and steady. You don't go from one workout benching, 135 pounds to 225 the next workout. It just doesn't happen. Same with running a marathon.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's something that people probably underestimate and maybe forget, is they think, well, okay, maybe I didn't go to the gym, but I'm not necessarily getting worse. But people fail to realize that every day that you're not going in one direction, you're actually going in the other direction. You've used the analogy before of, when you're out in the ocean and you lose track of the shoreline, where your chairs and towels and family members are. If you're just looking out at the horizon, pretty soon you're going to be like, whoa, a 20-minute walk down the beach from where I was. And I'm so far gone now, I can't even like swim against the current to get all the way back. I got to get out of the water. Got to walk 20 minutes down there back to where I was. So the consistency, I think, is the biggest piece. That matters a lot more than the intensity. And the same thing applies to the house analogy. People that have seen a house that's been foreclosed or a house that's been abandoned entirely, like after a while, like that thing starts to blend in with the wilderness, like it's going to be suffering from termite damage, the wood's going to rot, the materials are going to break down. I mean, you can look at any structure that's been around that's super historical that hasn't been preserved well, just starts breaking down after a period of time. And like the same thing will happen with whatever habit it is that you're looking to establish. So the consistency of really saying, all right, I missed a day, I missed 2 days, but I never missed more than that. I think that's something that is a really helpful key to really push people towards where they want to end up going in the long run. And just realizing anything that's moving in that direction is 100% better than any form of inactivity.
Yeah, no, and actually, it's interesting that you said, about just the house analogy, because the house that we live in now, when we first bought, we loved the property, the land, the house was fine, but it was like a 70-year-old house. And the people living there hadn't taken good care of it, but we thought, hey, it should be okay, it should be fine. So once we bought it and getting a good inspection, just from different builders, looking at doing some additions and remodeling, they said, actually, there's some foundational issues. You could fix them. There's some other things that you probably need to fix as well. But to be honest, it's going to cost so much to fix it. It might actually be best just to totally take the entire thing down and build from scratch. And he said it's actually going to cost you about the same amount of money. So sometimes in life we just have to be intentional and make wise about our decisions, and some things we may have to stop totally and just take them out of our life and give things up. Some people, maybe they need to give up alcohol. Sometimes they need to give up things that are pulling them in a direction that is, it's empty calories, and they're trying to lose weight, but they have a certain number of beers, and it's like, well, that's, yeah, nothing wrong with a beer or two every so often, but if you're trying to lose weight and you're doing that, you might need to think about what's going on. And so what we ended up doing with our house was, yes, we tore it down and we built a new one, but also that builder was intentional about how he put the foundation, right? The cornerstone was perfect. It was perfectly flat and level, and he built upon that so that the house wasn't crooked. And then every piece of wood, they plumbed it. It was true. And so, like, the same thing with our life. If we can be intentional and we can be, consistent, showing up every day, that house will get built quickly and it'll get built really well. But the question is, are we going to be intentional and consistent?
Absolutely. As we move on, the next piece that I want to hit in this whole thing is just the sense of urgency that people need to have. I think that we all overestimate the amount of time that we have left in life. There are endless numbers of tragedies that happen around the world every single day, just to have a sobering thought. And you never know if that's going to be you. Tomorrow isn't something that's promised or guaranteed to any of us. And it's just a reality that everyone needs to grapple with. But also, time just runs away faster than what most people realize. People turn around and they're like, oh man, I'm 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years old. I thought I was 20 years younger than that yesterday, it seems like. So there's a saying that you've mentioned before: the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. But if you can't plant it 20 years ago, then you might as well plant one now. So obviously, if you plant a tree today, you're not going to have fruit from that immediately. But if you don't plant one today, you can guarantee that you're going to have no fruit at all. So maybe just take this quote and apply it a little bit to just this whole reality of having a certain urgency to starting things now, and realizing that, obviously, as we've mentioned, the longer you put it off, the longer you're going to keep continuing that slow fade in the wrong direction.
Yeah, no, I mean, your quote is right on, because the next best day other than 20 years ago is today. And too often we say, well, I mean, I already missed the window, so I'm not going to do it now, and I'm already so far down this road. And no, the thing is if you're so far down the road that you think you can't turn around, you're wrong. The best thing you can do is turn around today and start walking back in the right direction. And um, I think the problem so often is that the shame or the regret, or maybe even just sometimes the work. Sometimes we're like, oh, but I've lost so much time already, and so, I mean, even with You Not Me, I mean, I remember back many years ago when this was first getting started. The company I was working for at the time didn't like that I was posting these things, and people thought that I had left the company, and it created some issues, and so they asked me to stop and to take it down, and unfortunately, I did. And I look back now and I hate the fact that I lost years, even though I was still working on writing the book, still doing all that stuff, but I lost the momentum I had gained. And I could have easily said, you know what? Or I should say, there are a lot of people who said, you know what? I've wasted too much time, forget it. It's past. But um, I don't care. It's not about what other people think or how much glory or whatever. It's about, am I doing the thing that A, I love to do, B, I know is best for me, and C is going to have hopefully a huge impact on the lives of other people. And yeah, maybe we are a little bit behind where we could have been, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't start. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't keep going, because the biggest thing is, again, back to it's your past. It's not your past that matters most. It's what direction are you now choosing to pivot and move forward? Because again, back to that tree. Yeah, that tree, you might plant it and it's only 10 or 15 feet tall, or who knows how big is the tree that you bought. But if you don't plant it now and then take the intentional steps of consistently watering it, fertilizing it, taking care of it, guess what? You're never going to end up with a tree that A, adds value to your property, but B, is going to bear fruit, and C, is going to provide shade and all sorts of things that, obviously oxygen, all these things that trees do. But if you just choose because you've gone too far in the wrong direction to just pass on it, you're missing out on the opportunity for the future.
Absolutely. And I saw something the other day, that says like the 80-year-old person, would love to go back and be 30 years old and be able to work out, to be able to run, to be able to have so much more movement in their body and also just energy. Same thing with the parent who's, maybe 60. Like they would love to go back to be with their, 5-year-old kid, even if they're, driving them totally insane because now their kid's out of the house and, they don't see him anymore and et cetera, et cetera. So just I think making that investment where when you get to that point in the future, when you look back, you can say, man, I'm really, really glad that I did that. So a lot of these investments that we're making now are really with the future self in mind. Like do the things now that your future self is going to look back and go, man, I'm so glad that I did that. So glad I made that choice to really take my health seriously. I'm so glad I decided to make that investment in my relationships at work. So glad that I decided to prioritize my family. So I think that whenever we have this kind of decision of, oh, I don't have the motivation, I don't feel driven, maybe I don't have the perfect, weather to go for a run. Well, you know, what is your future self going to think of your choice? Is it something that's going to be, wow, I'm really glad I did that? Or is it going to be, man, I blew all those years and I can't get them back anymore?
Yeah.
Something that I also wanted to bring up that you've mentioned in the book is the Galloway method when it
Mm.
comes to running. And I think that for a lot of people that go, well, I'm planting a tree, it's just a seed. But those small, small efforts are really the things that end up adding up over time. And slowly but surely, that seed, as you start to water it, as it gets sunlight, as it gets more exposure to nutrients in the soil, it starts to grow and grow and grow. So for people that aren't familiar, the Galloway method is a way of building endurance. I think it was started by a guy who was like training people to run marathons or something like
Yeah.
that. But basically the short of it is that everyone can walk, for the most part. So if you're not doing anything and you're just a total vegetable at the moment, couch potato, well, you can at least get off the couch and like go walk. And then after you walk for a while, eventually you can start to jog a little bit. So maybe you walk and then maybe you jog for a minute and then you walk again and then you jog and then so on. And then eventually after you jog, then you can start to run a little bit. And then eventually you can start to sprint. So it's just like these slow incremental increases in the intensity and maybe even the duration that you do things. And I think that people need to remember that endurance is built by just starting with where you are, that no investment is really too small. It's all still building towards something. So maybe if you could just give some encouragement to people who are like, well, yeah, I would love to start, but, I can only do one push up or I can do 5 squats in one day. Like, and they maybe feel a bit discouraged just by, the level that they're at the moment.
I think, I mean, obviously goal setting is a great thing. And then the problem is do people set kind of unreachable goals? It's important to, the old saying, it's important to aim for the stars, but if nothing else, you'll at least hit the moon. Right. And so
Mm,
the point is not to beat yourself up if you fall short of your goal. The question is, do you look back and say, man, look at how far I've come. Even though I didn't reach my goal yet, I at least have made so much progress from where I was. And some of it is, again, just starting. And some people are like, okay, I'm going to start tomorrow. And then all of a sudden, to your point, it's bad weather, it's raining or whatever. And I remember, it's funny when you mentioned that, one of the most fun runs that I ever had was with my boys when they were probably, I guess, 10 and 8, somewhere around there. And I was like, hey, let's go do the Murph. And so, for those of you who don't know, the Murph it's a mile run. You do 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, and then you do a mile run back. And normally the Murph is done with, a weighted vest. Obviously, 10 and 8-year-old, not going to put a weighted vest on them. But at the same time, it was raining. And it was probably like around 50 degrees. I think it was low 50. So it was actually pretty cool. And so we ran a mile out to a local public school, elementary school near us that had a gym set. And, we just went out and started doing push-ups and did, pull-ups and did squats. And then we turned around and ran back. And I have a picture of my boys, just the two of them afterwards, and just drenched hair and just smiles out to here. And they just had so much fun. And had I said, you know what, it's raining, guys, let's not, we'll do it tomorrow, whatever, it may have never happened. And the same thing with just getting started. And that's why the Galloway method is so great. I mean, I even did that today. So a little backstory on me too. Back in COVID, I remember the first time I got COVID, I had a pretty tough time with it. But I remember when I first started trying to work out afterwards, my heart and my lungs, like my heart felt like it was going to beat out of my chest, and my lungs, I just didn't have the fitness. And so I went from being very fit to then just like this because I wasn't able to really run or whatever. So I just kind of stopped running, just lifted weights. And then now I don't know how many years now later it is, I never really picked back up running on a regular basis. And so my fitness is way down. And so today, I mean, even just you and I haven't talked about this. I said, you know what? I'm gonna go for a jog to a local, field. And I brought my cleats. And then basically I did 20 minutes of jog, sprint, jog, sprint, jog, sprint, because I can do that. But for me, just to run forever for 3 miles or 4 miles now, like I'm like, I could, but I don't really think I would do well. So if I can start to build up by saying, you know what, I'm gonna get some sprints in because it's good for me functionally, but also too, it's raising hopefully my anaerobic threshold, my VO2 max, all that stuff. So I started doing that, and I feel great afterwards. Was it fun during? No, but at the same time, I'm that much more inclined to go do that in a couple days because I started, and that's the biggest thing. Is it's not about these giant leaps. And, again, like I said, nobody's going to go to the gym and they can only bench 135. And then they do that. They do 3 sets. And then they come back 2 days later after a rest day. And all of a sudden they're throwing 225 10 times. So you're not going to do that. And it's just about
Yeah.
showing up. It's just about taking the time to be intentional, be consistent. And over time, it pays off. And this is the hardest thing, is just getting started.
Another thing that we've spoken about recently, just in personal conversations, is just this phenomenon that is going on in English soccer right now with this club Wrexham AFC, and they have a documentary. And basically, Ryan Reynolds and I forget the other guy's name, but 2 Hollywood guys just decided to buy this club in the 5th tier of English soccer, which is like, yeah, I don't know, it's below single A baseball for perspective. So it's just like a pretty low level in the professional game. And they decided to buy the club and then just start to pump a lot of money into it. But more than that, they started to really connect with the local people. They had previous owners before, and those owners had kind of mismanaged the club and had failed to connect with really the heart of the club and what had made it at this point. Like, I think it's the 3rd oldest club in the history of the world for football teams around the country, soccer teams, I should say. So they have such a rich history, great tradition. In the past, they had played in much higher leagues, but over time, they just kind of lost the identity of the club. And I think the one thing that Ryan Reynolds and this other guy, what these guys have done that's just so genius, is that they've connected with the fans. They've connected with the culture of the club, the people who have made the club what it is today, that have been going to Wrexham games for 50, 60 years and really finding what it is that makes this club special and what makes them feel connected to it. And I think that what they've discovered really is that a logo or money or all of these exterior changes doesn't really make anything better over time. It's actually the internal work that they've been doing. Sure, the investment helps, they can buy some players, but it's really the cultural changes that they've made in terms of connecting with the fans, finding their identity, then recruiting people who believe in that identity and share in those values, and really establishing a lot of unity in the club to now, at the moment, they're on track to get their 3rd promotion in 3 years, which in the English system is more or less unheard of. So this just goes back to this idea of you can't just change the surface. You can't just buy the abandoned house and say, I'm just going to clean up the outside and, all is going to be well. We've all seen plenty of sports owners just come in and say, I'm going to pump tons of money into this and it will all go well. I mean, I don't want to pick on your team, Chris, with Chelsea, but like there's been some brutal recent years despite, massive investments into the club, but lacking some identity. So maybe if you could just hit on this idea of changing the inside first as we're starting to develop habits, and I'm assuming that we're taking steps towards making lasting change in our lives.
Yeah, I mean, again, we talk a lot about looking at the long term and not just the short term. And back to Chelsea, and there are a lot of teams that, the team is struggling, and then they sack the manager and they bring somebody in, and this guy maybe makes a short term improvement, but to your point is he's never taken the time to actually create unity and deep relationships with the players. And so at the minute they start to falter, then he throws the players into the bus and he loses the locker room, and then they get even worse, and then they fire him, and then they get a new one. And it's just this circus versus saying like, hey, can we buy somebody that truly believes in not just our club, but what we're trying to do? And again, you can have the greatest mission, vision, values at a company or a sports team, and it can be all over the walls. But if you don't actually live it, man, it just falls short. It falls on deaf ears. And the biggest thing is when you look at these, people trying to make change. I heard a great saying where it's like, look in the eyes of yourself and make the change internally first, and then see the change in the world because of who you've become and the people that you impact on a daily basis. Because if we fail to change ourselves and we just tell other people they need to change and that they're doing things wrong, but we don't ever fix ourselves first, not only do we alienate ourselves from other people, but I mean, we never truly create the change that we want. And that's why, again, you have to start on the inside, because we talk about the heart, and from everything springs from your heart, your thoughts, your words, your actions. And the biggest, problem is we talk a big game, but we don't live it out. So then people are like, they're a hypocrite or they're a liar or whatever. And maybe we have the best heart, but we're not doing it the right way. How we do things really matters. And so again, I go work out with a couple buddies, at the gym, and a friend of mine is, talking about wanting to shed a few pounds. And the biggest thing is starting, right? Showing up every day. The next thing is encouraging him, and even maybe even helping and saying, hey, here's some great different things for some good, healthy shakes afterwards with some protein, or here's some good diet ideas and some good, healthy recipes that maybe will reduce the carbs, whatever it is. And then, but also sometimes it's holding someone accountable and speaking the truth in love. And, if again, back to like we were talking about beers or whatever it is, that empty calories. And if the person truly wants to say lose weight or whatever, can you kindly say, I mean, that's probably not going to help you, my man.
Yeah.
If you're really trying to drop some LVs, you probably maybe pass on the ice cream today.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean to pass on every day, but at the same time, I mean, a shake every night, a milkshake every night, probably not the best if you want to try to lose some weight. And so,
Yeah. You already
you
got a beer belly, dude. Is that beer going to help your beer belly?
That's right. That's right. And so it's just really, it's finding a way to be intentional, to build those relationships. Part of it obviously has to start with you. Like, you have to make good decisions first, but then also, outwardly looking, to your point, you can't just change the logo of a team and then all of a sudden they're going to start winning. You have to go to the inside to really start making those changes to have a long-term effect.
Yeah. And I guess as we start to come to a close here, I think that it's important as well, as you've made the point, to as you go on your own growth journey, to start to turn that focus outwards. It's very tempting in this world that's obsessed with so much like self-help stuff of, I want to improve, I want to get better, that people often forget that they can also help other people get better, assuming that that person has obviously shown an interest in receiving your feedback and that, you're giving it with a pure heart and all of these things. But one thing that I want to just make the point of is that and you can attest to this, obviously, even from your recent experiences with working out with your friends, but there's actually so much more growth that can happen in the context of relationships. And that's because even the initial steps that you take, let's say you wanted to go out and run a few miles and you haven't done that in, say, a long, long time. you're going to get a mile or a mile and a half in and be like, man, this was a terrible idea. Like, why did I decide to do this? I feel awful. This sucks, etc. That mental inner voice is going to start killing you. And it's really hard when you're on your own to just push that out of the way and say, no, I'm going to keep going. But when you have other people that are with you, or you're helping someone else along on their journey, and then you can be that voice to say, hey, I know you're in the hurt locker right now, but I'm going to be here with you every single step of the way. We're finishing this 3 miles. Or if someone else is giving that to you and they're holding you accountable and say, hey, come on, stay with me. Just stay right here. I had a friend of mine, his dad was an Ironman runner and started off just running marathons and stuff. And he would often pace people to qualify for the Boston Marathon. So I think the pace is something like 7 minutes or something. You have to be able to run for 26.2, obviously. So they were running the Kiowa Island Marathon down in Charleston, and that was one of the qualifiers. And my friend's dad's pacing the guy, and he said, look, I'm going to run the flat, 7:02 or whatever it is, and I'm not going to get off that pace. So like, I'm going to be the line like that's just moving in front of you the whole way. You just have to stay right here with me. You don't have to do anything. I'll just stick with me. And of course, they get 8 miles in. The guy's feeling great. They're right there on the pace. Perfect. And the guy just had like a freak out and he was like, I need to run faster. My friend's dad's like, you don't. Like, just stay right here. Like, I'm literally the pace. If you just stay right here, like, you're going to qualify. Like, you don't have to do anything crazy. But the guy went off on his own and he sped up and, started running like a 6:30 or something like that, 6:45. And my friend's dad eventually caught up to him at like, mile 16, 17. And the guy was just completely cooked. And he ended up finishing, like 30 minutes behind my friend's dad. And he just said, dude, I told you just had to stay right here with me. But if you get off on your own, there's so many mental challenges that you can jump in, multiple different ditches depending on what's going on in your mind. So it's so important to have someone along with you in your growth journey, or for you to, even if you feel like you're, satisfied with where you're at, for you to be that for someone else.
Yeah, and one of the I think we've talked about this before, but when I was in high school, I played soccer, I wrestled, and I ran track. And there was a guy that I got to be friends with that played all three sports with me as well. So we did all this together. In a track, I was a sprinter, so I ran like 110 high hurdles, 300 hurdles, 400, and I hated long distance. I still to this day, the only long distance I enjoy is trail running because it's something different. Just running on a flat road, like mentally, I can be pretty weak at times. And I'm like, this is boring. And so we would sometimes, because we didn't have a track. So sometimes at my high school, our coach would just say, hey, do this loop. And it was like a 5 mile loop. And he and I would run together. And then I would be, 2 miles, 2.5 miles in. I'm like, oh, all right, I'm tired. I was gonna walk or whatever. He's like, no, no, no. He's like, look, he's like, see that stop sign? It's about 300 yards ahead. He's like, let's just run to that stop sign. And I was like, okay, I can run to the stop sign. So just keep running. And we got to the stop sign and I'd want to stop. And he's like, no, no, no. He's like, look, see that thing out in the distance? He's like, let's go to that. And the next thing you know, we're done with the 5 miles. And I ran the whole way. But at the time, I didn't have the mental strength to keep pushing myself. And if it weren't for my friend John Lancia, I would have missed out and I would have been walking probably the last 2.5 miles or whatever. And so again, it's just great to have those friends that, whether it's, a brother to guys around you or girls around you that, that you're just super close with and you can encourage, because really it's amazing. My friends and I even talked about this. You can do a really, really hard workout at the gym. It doesn't feel that hard because you're doing it with other people. If you did that same workout by yourself, you would possibly quit part of the way through, or you wouldn't do near as much. It's amazing when you have other people around you. It's not like you're actually stronger. There's something mental about it that you're like, it's fun. It's so like and you want to keep up, you want to do it, you want to help each other. And again, that's the whole point of unity. That's the whole point of having those relationships around you, is when times are hard, and maybe it's a chosen hard, it's a chosen suffering of a workout, or maybe it's times are hard and your job's falling apart, your marriage is falling apart. Do you have people around you that you can talk to? And that's the whole point of You Not Me, is people know how much you care. And when they know how much you care, they want to come alongside you when things are hard, because they know that you will be there when things are hard for them.
Absolutely. And I guess just to wrap up, we would both say here that, there's a lot of worthwhile habits that people can invest in. It's still young in 2025. there's a lot of change that people can make if people are still sticking with their New Year's resolutions, or if they just have new goals that they've set for themselves in 25 and they want to hit, certain milestones for those things. Keep pressing on. There's so many good investments in terms of investing in your health, or, you have a business goal, you want to go on some personal side quest, whatever it might be. But I think above all, you and I would both say that the most worthwhile investment that anyone can make in 2025, and the most impactful change and new habit that they can build, is living out you, not me, is prioritizing other people above themselves, and investing into relationships and making people feel cared and loved for. So as we close, maybe you can just conclude with some thoughts on that.
I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, you talk to whether it's people going through cancer or whatever it is, a hard time. I mean, if they take a moment to look outside themselves and see the need around them, their pain and suffering lightens, and they're able to handle it better. And sometimes you even forget about it. Not like being an ostrich putting your head in the sand and not, taking care of yourself, but it's amazing when you see the need around you and you really care about other people. It lightens the load that you're carrying. And often the times that we break down is when the load gets too heavy on us and we try to do it all on our own. And if we have relationships, people they'll want to lighten your load too. They will want to come alongside you because they love you deeply and they want to help you in your suffering to make it through, because you're going to make it through. No storm has ever lasted forever. And so the point is can you keep being consistent, putting one foot in front of the other, but also not just focusing on yourself, looking at the people around you. And again, there's that great Tibetan quote, that Tibetan proverb where when the man reached down to help another climb the mountain, lo, he scaled it himself. And sometimes we think, oh, I'm going to do something that's easy for me. I'm going to help somebody else do that. It's not helping me at all. But no, it is. You're still getting a rep in. You're still doing that. But also, man, you're bringing somebody along. You're actually helping them get better. And that's just one more relationship that you get to love and enjoy for the future. And hopefully it's for the long haul. Hopefully it's a long-term relationship. And that's what we all need more of, is those long-term relationships of deep value, mutual love.
Absolutely. Chris, thanks so much for the conversation today. Just to wrap up, maybe we can give a couple of action steps that are just practical for people, maybe just to sum everything up. We've covered a lot of ground today. What are maybe 2 to 3 action steps that you would give to someone, regardless of what habit they're looking to build, and obviously reminding them that the ultimate habit to build is ingraining a you, not me mindset in 2025?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing is, again, like we talked about today, just start now. Figuring out, where do you want to go? What direction you want to head. Doesn't matter where you've been. What direction do you want to head now? And start. And even if it's just something little, even if it's, again, starting to want to live out a you, not me mindset, maybe it's not natural for you. Maybe it's not muscle memory to be kind and smile to everyone you see. Choose one person. Just choose one person that you see each day and just smile or say hello or hold the door for somebody, little things like that. And then also too, just holding yourself accountable to a goal that you set that is actually attainable. Try to set something that makes sense, that you can follow on a regular basis, that you can fit in your schedule. Because again, if you want to get fit and you don't have an hour to work out, and if you're going to take an hour, but that's going to take time away from your kids, probably not a good idea. Maybe you just choose 30 minutes, or maybe you bring your kids into the workout like I did. Like, I mean, that's the thing. Like, my boys love to work out now because we did it as a family. We would even do family workouts where my wife would join in. And I was just talking about it today, and those were so much fun. And to your point, I'm about to be 50 this year. The 50, 60, 70-year-old guy looks back and was like, I would love to be 30 again or 40 again, and to have time. Even though I've done a pretty good job with my boys, there are still things I wish I would have done differently. I wish I would have done better. So don't have shame or regret for things that you've missed out on now. Don't worry about the time lost. Start now. Even if it's a relationship, maybe it's a relationship that's gone awry for a number of years now. Start now. Pick up the phone, make a phone call, send a text, start that relationship again. Because I promise you, the longer you wait to do something, the more regret and shame you're going to have.
Absolutely. Chris, thanks so much for the wisdom and insight today and for the conversation. If you're new to You Not Me, there's a number of ways that you can connect with us for free. These are all free resources. You can subscribe to the You Not Me newsletter, which goes out every Saturday morning. It's on Substack. It's younotme.substack.com. You can also follow Chris on Instagram or on LinkedIn. And we also have younotme.com with a number of free resources there. Thanks so much for listening.